He tucked our daughter into bed at 8 p.m. By 9 p.m., he was reading bedtime stories to another little girl, a girl who also called him Papa. I found the video on his phone. She twirled in a princess dress. He lifted her, kissed her forehead, and said, "Pumpkin, you're just like your sister. Except I never gave birth to that child, and I never knew our mother existed." 10 years of marriage, one beautiful daughter, family vacations, anniversary gifts, all built on a double life. My husband had a second family, not an affair, not a fling, a parallel reality running side by side with mine. This is the story of how one video tore my life apart and how I uncovered lies so perfect it almost destroyed me. If you've ever felt something was off, trust your gut. Like, subscribe, and stay. This story will haunt you. If anyone asked, I would have said we had a great marriage. Not perfect, but warm, safe, real. Alex was dependable. He wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't post about us on Instagram or bring home diamonds. But he made coffee every morning before I got up. He texted me before boarding every flight. He called our daughter his whole world. He showed up to her ballet recitals, even when he was jet-lagged. And he made me feel chosen. I know how that sounds sappy, but when you've been married for a decade with a child and bills and aging parents, being chosen still matters. Alex worked in regional logistics for a large distribution company. That meant monthly trips, usually 3 days away, sometimes a week. He never missed a return flight, never came home smelling like perfume, never hid his phone. I didn't suspect a thing. And maybe that's what hurts the most. How good he was at pretending. How good I was at believing. We lived in a quiet neighborhood near Denver. One of those places where all the houses have porches, all the dogs are golden retrievers, and people wave when they walk by, whether they mean it or not. Our daughter, Sophie, was 8, bright, bubbly, and obsessed with baking shows. She adored her dad, and he adored her, or at least that's what I believed. Sometimes we'd joke that she was Daddy's clone. Same laugh, same eyes, same stubborn little nose. Now, I wonder, did he ever look at Sophie and think about the other child? The one he held on weekends I thought he was working? Did he feel guilty? Or did he just partition it all away, like files on a computer neatly labeled, easily hidden? I replay our life now like a movie I've seen too many times, looking for clues, trying to spot the moment it all began. Was it that business trip he added at the last minute in 2017? Or the time he missed Sophie's parent-teacher conference and sent flowers as an apology? Maybe I didn't miss the signs. Maybe I was just too trusting to believe in signs at all. Back then, I would have defended him with my life. Now, I'm just trying to figure out who the hell I married. Because if he could build 2 entire families, 2 lives with birthdays, school events, and bedtime stories, what else? Was he capable of hiding? It started on a Thursday. Alex was in the shower, and his phone lit up on the bathroom counter. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. But that day, I was transferring videos from my phone to our shared cloud drive. We'd been planning a surprise birthday slideshow for Sophie. So, out of convenience, not suspicion, I opened his gallery. Scrolled past airport photos, lunch meetings, a few selfies with our dog. And then, a video caught my eye. It wasn't labeled. Just a date, 2 weeks ago. I tapped play. There she was. A little girl, maybe 4, wearing a blue princess dress with sparkles and white sneakers. She was running in a park, giggling, arms outstretched. "Papa, look," I'm flying. Her voice was high, pure, excited. The camera shifted. Alex laughed his laugh, unmistakable, and lifted her off the ground. He spun her in the air like he used to do with Sophie when she was that age. Then he said, "Pumpkin, don't go too far. Mama will worry, Mama." The video ended with the girl hugging him tight and whispering, "I missed you." I stared at the screen, frozen. Every breath felt like inhaling glass. It had to be a joke. A client's kid? A niece? But deep down, I knew. No one else called him Papa. No one else got that look in his eyes, that softness, that pride. I backed out of the video and opened the metadata. Location: Aurora, Colorado. Timestamp: Saturday. He'd told me he was in Salt Lake City for a logistics conference. I kept digging. There were photos him holding the same girl, her hand in his. One image showed a woman beside him. Brunette, maybe late 30s. She was laughing. He had his hand on her lower back. They looked like a family. I felt my knees weaken. Sat on the edge of the bathtub with the phone clutched in both hands. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a mistake. This was a life. I wanted to scream. But Sophie was in the living room, watching cartoons. And Alex was still humming in the shower, completely unaware that his entire world was about to detonate. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and tried to breathe. Over the next 2 days, I became someone else. Quiet, focused, cold. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was an investigator, driven by one need: the truth. I checked his calendar, his credit card receipts, his Google Maps history. Everything aligned. Every conference lined up with weekends in Aurora. Every flight delay coincided with holidays I now realized he spent. Not with us. He had 2 lives, 2 children, 2 women who thought they knew him. And I had nothing but this gnawing sense that I had slept beside a stranger for an entire decade. I waited 2 nights. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to see if he would tell me himself. He didn't. He kissed me on the forehead, asked about Sophie's homework, made a joke about how the office coffee was slowly killing him. I smiled, laughed even, because that's what you do when your whole world is about to explode. You pretend one last time. On the second night, after Sophie had gone to bed, I poured us both a drink. Whiskey for him, water for me. We sat in the living room. He was scrolling through his emails. I stared at him, at the man I married, the man I bore a child with. The man who had a second family like it was just another line on his calendar. And I asked softly but directly, "How old is Emily?" He didn't flinch, didn't ask who, didn't pretend not to know. He closed his laptop slowly, looked at me, and whispered, "She's 5. My heart dropped so fast, I thought I might faint. Not because I didn't know, but because he did. Because he answered so easily, like it was just a fact he'd stored away. I asked again, "And her mother?" A pause. "Her name is Rachel. We met a long time ago, before Sophie, but we reconnected about a year into our marriage." A year into our marriage. I had just come home from giving birth, bleeding, exhausted, breastfeeding around the clock, and he was out reconnecting. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply asked, "Do they know about me?" He nodded. "Rachel does. The kids don't. They just think I travel a lot." I covered my face, not because I was crying, but because I couldn't bear to look at him. He reached out, I didn't plan for it to go this far. That line, that cliché, I almost laughed. 10 years, 2 kids, 2 homes, and this was some sort of accident? He said he still loved me, that he never stopped, that he was just divided, like his heart belonged to both lives. But love doesn't lie like that. Love doesn't schedule birthdays around deception. Love doesn't erase half of your life when you step into a different house. I stood up, and I said the last thing I ever wanted to say to the father of my child. I want you to leave. He didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't offer explanations, just nodded, packed a bag, and walked out. I watched from the window as his car disappeared down the street. And in that silence, I realized the lie wasn't just that he had another family. The real lie was that he had ever truly chosen me. The first night without him was the quietest night of my life. Not peaceful, not calm, just quiet. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like the house was holding its breath. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the same counter where he used to make morning coffee, the mug rack, the dented toaster he never replaced, his side of the pantry. Everything still looked the same, but nothing was the same. Sophie asked where Daddy went. I froze. She was sitting at the table, swinging her legs, eating applesauce. And just like that, the hardest moment wasn't finding the video. It was this, looking into the eyes of our daughter and saying, Daddy's going to be gone for a little. While she frowned. Work trip again? I nodded. She shrugged and went back to her snack. But I felt sick, because now I was the one lying. Because now, in some twisted irony, I had inherited the very mask he had worn for years. That weekend, I told my parents. My mom cried. My dad clenched his jaw so tight, I thought he'd break a tooth. But the worst part? They weren't shocked. My mother said, he always seemed too perfect. That hurt more than I expected. Friends called out of routine, not knowing. I ignored most of them. I wasn't ready to explain. Not yet. I went back to work that Monday, smiled through meetings, answered emails, ate lunch at my desk. But in the bathroom stall at 2:40 p.m., I sat on the toilet with my knees pulled to my chest and sobbed so quietly no one would hear. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders. His jacket still on the coat rack, his shampoo in the shower, his login still remembered on the Netflix app. I could have deleted him, burned it all, but I didn't. I needed the pain, not to punish myself, but to stay awake, to stay present in the aftermath. I started having dreams, strange ones. In one, I was in a house that kept growing extra rooms. Each door I opened led to another family, another secret. In another, I kept calling his name, but every time he turned around, he had a different face. Grief does that to you. It scrambles reality. It mixes memory with fear. It leaves you questioning not just your past, but your instincts. I thought I was smart. I thought I was intuitive. How did I not see it? The guilt became its own monster. Even though he was the liar, I still blamed myself. I journaled, not because I had answers, but because I needed to hear myself speak somewhere. And one night, I wrote, maybe the worst betrayal isn't that he had another family. It's that I let mine be built on his version of love. They say grief has stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Whoever wrote that forgot about the stage in between. The one where you're just numb, where brushing your teeth feels like climbing a mountain, where you replay every second of every year together, not to find comfort, but to locate the lie, That's where I lived for a while. But then something shifted. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. I picked Sophie up from school. She was unusually quiet. When I asked what was wrong, she said, "Daddy hasn't called." I told her he was probably busy. She nodded, then whispered, "I think you're sad, but you pretend to be okay, so I won't be sad too." I don't remember how I drove home that day, but I do remember walking into the bathroom, looking at my reflection, and realizing I didn't even recognize the woman in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes dull. My shoulders drooped like I was constantly apologizing to the world for something I didn't do. And I thought, is this the version of me my daughter will grow up watching? That night, I made a choice not to forgive him. Not yet, but to stop letting him occupy every inch of my mind. I started small. I changed my pillowcases, deleted his name from my favorites list, unsubscribed from emails we once signed up for together. Little things, tiny rituals of reclamation. I went back to therapy, started talking, really talking, about the way I had shaped my identity around wife, how I mistook consistency for loyalty, how I believed that because he came home, he was mine. The therapist said something that stuck with me. Infidelity isn't just about sex or secrets. It's about someone rewriting the rules of your life without telling you. I cried for an hour after that session, but then I began to rebuild. Not the marriage, not even my confidence, but something deeper. My sense of truth. I stopped blaming myself. Stopped asking, why didn't I see it? Because that path only leads to shame, and shame belongs to him, not me. I started jogging again, not because I wanted to look good, but because I wanted to feel strong. I reconnected with friends I had pulled away from. Some offered advice. Most just listened. A few told me their own stories. Apparently, there are more of us than we think. People who loved deeply, trusted fully, and got burned anyway. I also started documenting everything. Every time he missed a scheduled call with Sophie, every excuse, every silence, not for revenge, but for clarity if I ever needed it in court. Because now, I wasn't just someone healing. I was a mother protecting her child. And slowly, the fog began to lift. I could laugh again briefly, cautiously. I could go an entire day without checking his social media. I could walk through the kids section at Target without feeling like I might collapse. It wasn't victory, but it was movement. And movement, I've learned, is what healing looks like in its earliest, most fragile form. We met at a neutral place, his idea, a park between our two homes, ours and hers. It had been nearly 6 weeks. 6 weeks of silence, of lawyers, of child visitation schedules, of unanswered questions. He looked tired, older, like the weight of everything had finally caught up with him. I didn't hug him, didn't sit too close, didn't smile. He brought coffee, my favorite order. I didn't drink it. We talked about Sophie, her school, her mood swings, her nightmares, how she sometimes wakes up asking why Daddy stopped saying goodnight. Then, silence. He said, "I never wanted to hurt you. You were my first real home." I nodded. Not because I forgave him, but because I believed him. Sometimes people do terrible things, not because they want to destroy, but because they lack the courage to choose just one life. I asked him if he still loved Rachel. He said yes. I asked if he loved me. He paused, then whispered, "I think I loved what you believed about me." That was the most honest thing he'd ever said. I took a breath and said the words I had practiced in therapy. I loved you. I truly did. But I can't carry both our versions of the truth anymore. He nodded again, tears in his eyes. I didn't comfort him. He asked if we could ever be friends. I said no. Not because I hate him, but because I love myself too much to pretend anymore. We stood up. He went to hug me, and I stepped back. A gentle gesture, not a cruel one. He understood. I watched him walk to his car. No dramatic goodbye. No final glance. Just a man walking away from the ruins he built with his own hands. I turned and walked the other way. Not just out of the park, but out of the version of my life that had been. Written for me by someone else. People always ask, how do you move on after something like that? The answer is, you don't. Not at first. Not all at once. And not completely. You move in fragments. You move in small choices. You move because you can't afford to stay still. I lost a husband, but I gained something more precious, the truth. Not just about him, but about myself, about what I deserve, about how strong I actually am when the mask falls off and reality punches me in the chest. I'm not telling this story for sympathy. I'm telling it because someone out there might need to hear it. Someone who's just found a text, a receipt, a video, a lee. And if that's you, listen to me. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not the reason they lied. They did that because they could. Because you believed in them too much to suspect them. Because they never thought you'd find the courage to walk away. But you did. Or you will. And when you do, it won't feel like winning. It'll feel like standing in the ashes of your old life, wondering what's left to rebuild. But let me tell you, there's so much left. You just haven't seen it yet. And one day, you'll laugh again. You'll trust again. Not because they were worthy, but because you are. If this story spoke to something buried in you, if you've ever loved someone who lived a lie, hit the like button, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Lies Unveiled, where truth finds its voice, one story at a time.